How's it going, everyone? I'm Larry Gonzalez, as usual, here again. In today's video, we're going to take a look now at what is the problems that Redux solve, and especially is the Redux toolkits, because this is a course taught by Steve Kinney, head frontend engineer at Temporal, right? He says like, hey, we're gonna see how to use this most battle test state management library out there, and before learn how to use it, it's like, why would I need to use this? It's like, what is the problem that it solves? What is the benefit that I get from this? Because if you know a little bit of Redux or React as a way to how you can manage the state of your applications, that kind of thing, well, the idea is to say, all right, now as we evolve and as our applications grow and expand and scale, how can we now make the state management something that is something that is easy to work, especially so the more state that we need to keep track here. So because of that, and I'm going to mention is what is the main pain points that developer has, especially when they deploy their code to production, and that is, all right, because having a state management here using a reducer is something that is 100% testable, right? A lot of the time, it requires too much ceremony to dispatch an action or to do something. So React RTK actually make it that things so simplify a lot of that stuff. So that's one. Also, when we need to integrate that to Typescript as a way to know the intention of the author codebase in the file as well, we would need to know is what are the stuff needed. What are the stuff needed as a way to integrate that with Typescript and make it easy to work with Typescript, so we can know is the shape of the data and get it while getting all of these auto completions features and putting all of this guardrail of how our code should be used for other developers. And when we want to extend now the functionality by adding a middleware to the Redux, sometimes it requires you to go and Google things to actually do that, to connect that. So this particular course is going to look at that and say, hey, it'll makes a lot of sense to know first how can we work with different data models, and then use the dispatchers as a way to conveniently update those states or those different state models. That's one. And then how can we integrate Typescript to Redux? Also look at what is the things that this particular library is doing behind the scenes. What are the works that is saving us to do. And last but not least is that, hey, how can, when it comes to data fetching, how can we actually manage that using now this particularly tool middleware called RTK query, right? So now that we identify all of these pain points and we can quickly describe them, all right. So we look at how can we create in slice, okay? Type hooks. What is this? Asynchronous requests. Oh, this is now how the core structure. Ooh. Okay. Ooh, is this one? Is in introduction. I messed this up a little bit. Okay, it's introduction. And then we're going to take a look at the Redux toolkit for that. Okay, Redux toolkit, as well as the type hooks, right? So type hooks, and last but not least, asynchronous requests as a way to see how you can now integrate the data fetching, or as a way to look at how can we integrate our data fetch from the server into our React and Redux app. So let's get into this. Okay. Another one, this is another one. So we look at how can we create a slide. It's not that hard, you know, pretty straightforward, simple. And what are the things that actually is creating behind the scenes? So we got now is in this case, let me take a look at React Perform. I should have closed this because we're not gonna use that any longer. Similar to this, we should close this, and then we should open is now this one, the Redux super tasker here. Okay, good. So is this one? Yeah, it is.
That does not kind of.
So we got also a feature that you got it. Okay. Yeah, we created a task slice, right? So here, follow me along. Well, that's right. So we're going to create now a slice here, and how important is to when you're doing this. It's like task slide, task slide .ts, because we're gonna start working with that. Initially we are going to look at how important it is to define is the data structure in your states, right? So that's why we define here as the type here for this simple case called now task, because we're gonna create a very simple just task app, task state, say export, you got this, followed by this. And here's when you're starting to define is the shape of your data structure. So entity will be now an array. Okay. All right. But an array of task. Right. Say task, which is part of the interface or that type. Okay. And then we started to create is this slice. You may wonder what a slide represents, right? Create slice. Slice in Redux. Okay. So what a slice are, right? A function that has an initial state and an object reducer function and a slide name. Okay, and automatically generate actions creators and actions types that corresponds to the reducer and state. This is okay. So this slice, okay, it described this as a function that is going to receive is the initial state, the reducer functions, and a slide name. So pretty much this is actually interesting. An extra reducer here, an object of case reducers. Key name will be used to generate actions. A builder callback function used to add more reducers. Okay, a builder callback function used to add more reducers, extra reducer, and then reduce path. A preference for slide reducers location used by combined slice and slide selector, and selectors, an object of selectors which receive the slide state as their first parameter. So this is the anatomy of that, right? So, but the TLDR of this is it is an object or it's a function that receives is the reducer as well as the initial state, the reducer, the initial state, the reducer, and a slice name, and automatically generate actions creator and actions type. That's when you think it's like, okay, what is an actions creator and action type? Okay. Okay, an action creator and an action type. This is what we're going to actually look at that. Okay, create actions creator and actions type. So that's interesting because it's creating in the actions after all is this objects that we pass that contains the type and the payload that we're gonna use by passing that to the reducer, which is this functions that is gonna take the initial state and the actions to generate a new bit of a state, which is great. Okay. And it will now automatically generates these action types and actions creators. The API is a standard approach for writing Redux logic. It internally uses create actions and create reducers. You may also use imer to write mutating immutable updates for that. So this create action and create reducers, okay, it's a helper function for defining a Redux action type and creator, which is the TLDR of that is going to generate is this action that I mentioned. It's gonna return that behind the scenes. That makes a lot of sense. And the reducer is going to create now is a utility that simplifies creating Redux reducer function. Again, remember that after all, especially when you're working with Redux, which is great for keep tracking the state management and provide this dev tool to do this time travel debugging and see how the state change over time, it requires a lot of ceremony. It requires a lot of boilerplate. So Redux toolkits say, hey, you know what? Let's go to actually let's go to automate that particular process. No. Let's going to automate that particular process, and that is the create. Okay, this automating is create actions. Makes a lot of sense. Okay. Create actions. Okay. Interesting. Create actions. That's okay. Makes a lot of sense. In this create action, you passing now this create action here with the type of the payload, I'm assuming. Yep. Followed by the name of that. So now this action is called as an increment. And then you say, hey, you know what? Okay, action that increment 3. Okay, so now they actually use that. So it's going to generate that action. Or it's going to generate is this objects. Okay. 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 So with the create reducers here, And with create reducer, a utility that simplifies creating reducers functions. It uses IMER internally to drastically simplify immutable updates logic by writing mutative code. Okay, in your reducers, and supports directly mapping specific action type to case reducer function that will update the state when that action is dispatched. I mean, this is interesting. Interesting. So create act. Okay. So reducers are often implemented using a switch statement with one of the case for every handled action type. This approach works well, but it's a bit boilerplate in error prone. For instance, it's easy to forget the default case. Yeah. And the create reducer helper streamline the implementation of such reducers. It uses a builder callback notation to define handlers for specific action types, matching against a range of actions, or handling default case. This is conceptually similar to a switch statement but with better Typescript support. That's the reason why they provide you now these two things. All right. Oh, that makes a lot of sense. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Ooh, hell no. Okay. 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 Interesting. So with the create actions, it generates this action for us. So we don't have to create the objects. Okay. And it is also provides some TypeScript support. All right. Okay. And the other is the create reducer, because here, since your reducer is just this function that takes an initial state and an actions that is going to generate a new bit of a state, because it requires a lot of boilerplates, and it is sometimes error prone to write that. It is using behind the scenes the IMER as a way to mutate the code, as a way to write a mutating code for your reducers. So the adding is all of this layer of complexity on top of that. Because if you do this, it is of course way much more simple and provide more TypeScript support. Allegedly, right? Allegedly. So create reducer for that. So the create reducer helper streamline the implementation of such reducers. So it uses builder callback notation to define handler for specific action types. Okay. So add case, and add case. Okay. So what it's gonna do is to now this builder callback notation to define handlers for specific action types, matching against a range of actions, or handling default case. This is conceptually similar to switch statement, but with better TypeScript support. With create reducer, your reducer instead look like this. So with this create reducer, instead of you actually having to create this function that actually take now the state and an action, you're going to pass now the initial state followed by this callback that is going to receive the builder, and then on the builder is when you're going to add all of these case that you want to handle in your reducers. Increment, decrement, increment by amount. Okay. Uses with the builder callback notations. And the idea of this is that it provides now better Typescript support. Alright. Okay. Alright. So writing reducer with Imer. Okay. You can apply a matcher function to incoming action. This action with number payload and a default case. Builder add case and add matcher. Okay, but at least it's to understand now is the basics. Is the basic. So what is the problem that it solves? Which is allowing us to create now this reducers less error prone, with less ceremony, and with better Typescript support. Okay. And the action here, this create action, is like, hey, let's going to create also is this action objects, and I'm going to provide to you with Typescript support. Okay. All right. Reducers and actions. Wait, what is this? Okay. Reducers and actions. And then the slice, okay, is now this object that is a function that accepts the initial state, an object of reducer functions, and a slide that automatically generate actions creators and actions type that corresponds to the reducer end state. So the API is a standard approach for writing Redux logic. Internally, it uses create action and create reducer, so you may also use Imer to write mutating immutable updates. So far so good. Okay. So this is a way of how now you in Redux can create this particular function, okay, that automatically generates this actions, creators, these objects, actions, as well as it is type that corresponds to the reducer and the state. It means that it's going to it means that this will now create the actions as well as the reducer. So instead of you having to create a file for each one of those actions and the object that is going to generate for each one of those actions, all of this ceremony that it requires as a way to now update the state of your application. Now Redux, especially when you create a slice, is created. So giving now the initial, okay. So giving now the name. So giving now the actions or the initial state and the reducers, followed by the name of that slide, is going to generate is the actions and the actions types that match that reducer, that match that state management. Okay. Interesting. Okay, and behind the scene is using now create actions and create reducers. Where create action is a function that generates all of these actions, and create reducer now is these functions that provide more Typescript support by generating is the reducers, and by generating it by taking its initial state and the builder objects that is going to now create all of these cases that you're going to update your state. Okay, Jesus. Mm-hmm. Again, this is using this toolkit for that. Exactly. So here you are creating out your actions, followed by the reducer. But as you can see, is a lot of boilerplate that you are doing here. A lot of boilerplate that you're doing here. Mm-hmm. Yeah, a lot of boilerplate that you're doing here. Okay, makes sense. Makes sense to create now your slice. Okay. All right.
Take any arguments, and sometimes that's true, right? They hit the log out button. A lot of times there's not extra information that you need to give. It's like user is logging out.
So okay. Okay. So this create slice is this create. No, I don't have access to. Oh, because I didn't. I think I didn't. No. npm this example here. npm install. Yeah, that's what happened. So the Typescript server running on the VS Code is say, hey, yeah, that's right, but create slice now. That's interesting. Create slice. What? Interesting. That's interesting. Okay. Where am I working, bro? Super tasker.
We are going to look at like assigned strings. It's cool. The only this is going to give me an excuse to talk about like mistakes that I have made in the past and how you cannot be like me, or you can be like current me and not like past me. Nobody wants to be like past me. Awesome. So we normally in Redux, I bring it up in the beginning. This is the only kind of like, hi, my name is, pull down from main. We've got a little counter. We want stuff installed. This is kind of just another like packing list application that we can use to like that has a mock API built app called Supertasker, and that is it's a to-do list, but it has statuses and superhero names, so it's not like a to-do list. The interesting part about this application is that it's not just check a box. This is the idea of having two related models. That this idea that a user has many tasks and that a task belongs to a user, right? And so like, how do you have an action that maybe like works through two reducers? One of the things, and we'll talk about this in the workshop, one of the things that I have seen a lot of teams, including my own teams, over the years do is like, oh, I have to fire like 6 different actions because I got to change the user and I got to change the task and I got to change these 3 other things. And like you don't, right? So we have a way that we can kind of see what that looks like and some of the concepts in Redux like that. Along the way, we will then also kind of just look at a stupid counter to see like what it looks like to just try in a very simple app to like see what it looks like to migrate stuff from maybe either use reducer or regular vanilla Redux to something in Redux Toolkit and TypeScript and stuff.
Exactly. Okay.
Yeah, and then lastly, we will do a little bit of explorations with RTK.
Okay, makes sense. So now that we can create is this slice, okay, and assign that to the slice. So following is the slice here, you say, hey, now this is called is the to-do slice or the task slice. Or in plural, task slice. Okay, where here initially is going to take is the, okay, it's an object configuration. I'm gonna have is the name.
Okay, query, which is a set of features that are like come with Redux Toolkit, but you could use separately. You actually don't even need to use Redux to use it. A set of tools that deal with the fact that like, not these days it's not only just managing a bunch of state in our applications, but usually there's a lot of talking back and forth with the server. So if you don't have these cloned, the first one is called Supertasker, because it's got superheroes. You should clone it and npm install it, give it a nice fresh pull down from main. So that's great for something that does not kind of take any arguments, and sometimes that's true, right? They hit the logout button. A lot of times there's not extra information that you need.
Yeah, let's go to create the initial state, which is cons initial state that we're gonna pass through that, which is the task, which is this object here. That must be is a task state, right? That is made of entities of type task. So when you hover this, it's a, well, actually this is an entity of task. Pretty straightforward. Name initial. So here is when now things started to look at the create slide. So you got, so here you're gonna pass is a name, slide name, task, I'm assuming here, in plural, followed by the initial state and the reducers, where you're going to declare here the cases that you want to cover. Okay, which is here. Exactly. Action creator and action type that correspond to the reducer end state. So that's what it's gonna do here. It's going to generate the action types. It's going to generate the actions. It's going to generate. It's automatically generates the actions. Actions creators, action types that correspond to the reducer end state. So this reducer exactly is an object here. And we can define here is now is the case that is going to handle that. So here we can say add the task, okay, similar to the remove task. Here you're gonna receive is now the state, all right, and then do something with that. Because behind the scene is now is using create actions and create reducers. And with create actions just generating is the action object like that, and with create reducer is now actually is a remove task here, yeah, and with create now reducer. And we create now reducer. What it's doing is to provide now more TypeScript safety, or that provide more TypeScript, provide better TypeScript support, and provide more TypeScript support. That's one, as well as to generate is this reducer that match all of this case, which is using now is the initial state and the builder, which is doing behind the scenes.
Okay. It's like user is logging out, or like this thing was clicked, I need to do a thing. But sometimes, like if we're adding a task, sometimes it's helpful Tell me more. What task did they add? What action did they take with the counter or what have you, right? Depending on what you're working on. So yeah, we have payloads a lot of times. And Redux itself doesn't really care. It's like, as long as you got an action type, Wild West for anything else in that object. Use reduce and react literally doesn't care. It could be a number, it could be undefined for all it cares. But there is a pattern. It was originally called Flux Standard Actions. And the kind of like, there's a meta property and some other things, but the two major pieces is to structure the action in a way that has like a type, which is the same string that we know and love, like what happened, and a payload, and like making sure that like instead of having a bunch of keys like spread throughout this object and letting everyone in your team guess where you put everything, just having.
Oh, it's explaining what is doing behind
You'll
the
notice
scene.
that in case it'll work because I believe that counts as any. Now, clearly said it should only be tasks.
And again, the way we are actually mutating is this object, or to generate this new bit of a state, is behind the scene is using now IMER.
But as soon as you say that something is any, TypeScript's like, I don't know what to do with you. I give up. Luckily, like adding a type to this is relatively straightforward. It's like, because this is, if you look at this is just a JavaScript function. Nothing special here, right? And we get kind of like a type system kind of
That's
supported in here. So there are a bunch of different ones. There's action, but then we want the one that's
And
action.
here now they receive the state and an action.
And then all you have to do is say what type it should be getting. Alex, what's up?
Yeah, just a couple questions.
And this
So,
action
here I'm seeing you create a slice and you create a bunch of
payload
and I remember like in vanilla
must be
Redux,
of this.
every action is dispatched to every reducer.
Yep.
How does it act here? Because only the
Action
reducers from this
dot
list gonna receive those
payload.
So everything you know about Redux is still.
Exactly. But you say, hey, what happened is that, yeah, we have now
Nothing
this
special here,
as any.
right? And we get kind of like a type system kind of supported in here. So there are a bunch of different.
So now they provide some utility functions for that. Like say actions. Okay.
different ones. There's action, but then we want the one that action that has a payload, and that's payload action.
Payload actions. Where now these payload actions must be a genetic. Okay, that must be as the task. So now when we hover here, we say that, hey, this is a task that of course contains all of this. Alright, so again, this provide a better TypeScript support, especially for creating is now this actions and reducers to make the state update maintainable with better TypeScript support, because behind the scene is doing a lot of this heavy lifting. Is this doing well? Is using the create action that's going to generate is the actions for that as well as the type for that, and also is going to use is the create reducers as a way to provide now is you that the initial state that you are given to that followed by the builder, which is used as a way to now generate all of this case on the fly with TypeScript support. So you don't have to do that kind of thing. Okay.
And then all you have to do is say what type it should be getting. Alex, what's up?
Yeah, just a couple questions. So here I'm seeing you create a slice and you create a bunch of reducers. And I remember like in vanilla Redux, every action is dispatched to every reducer.
Yep.
How does it act here? And I remember like in vanilla Redux, every action is dispatched to every reducer.
Yep.
How does it act here? Does only the reducers from this list gonna receive those actions or no?
So everything you know about Redux is still true, right? And that is a really great question. We will also cover later, but we'll do the sneak peek now, right? So Alex's question was like, hey, don't every action go to every reducer? Because combined reducer is just taking a bunch of functions and running it through. It's just wiring up for you. These by default are bound to this slice. There is another property here called extra reducers, right? Which are what are the things that this slice is not in charge of that it might need to deal with, right? So at one point later today, we're gonna do the feature which is of like.
So extra reducer is answering the question of what are the actions?
Like extra reducers, right? Which are, what are the things that this slice is not in charge of?
Okay, what are the things that this slide is not charged on? Is not charged on? Is not charged off? That I need to deal with. That it might need to deal with. Okay. Extra reducer.
That it might need to deal with.
Okay. Create slides like this and create actions. So Redux toolkit generate the action creator and the types for us.
Right. So at one point later today, we're going to do the feature which is if like we remove a user from a list, unassign all their tasks. Right. What I
Exactly. Remove one user of the list, unassign all of the task.
don't want to have to do, to your point, is dispatch two actions, one to the user's slice, one to the task slice. I just want to say, yo, user was removed, unassign their stuff, right? And like make it happen. So there's actually a really great syntax. And the nice part about this is even with that, even when it's like everything listens to everything, we will get full TypeScript support, right? And we will get the full type safety with, other than right now writing the type for the state, which I just used because I didn't want to write it in line, we've written very little TypeScript for full type safety, right? And I guess this typing this action right here to say like, this will be a task. And what's nice about this is now I get all the safety, I can autocomplete it and stuff along those lines. And now kind of if we look at this action, it assumes that like that payload is a task. It will not let me accidentally call methods, so on and so forth, right? A lot of the error proneness of using Redux is, oh, it's a bunch of conditionals or a switch statement and you mistyped the action type, right? Or you called the wrong property on the object because you forgot the actual shape of it. So like stopping a lot of the mistakes and not really asking for much for you in return, right? You get most of this for free at this point. And you can just kind of use it is really pretty great. So again, if we say tasks slice, and we look at it now,
because exactly that's
this action creator with payload task, it will dispense that action. So like even when we try to call it, it will
so instead
like
of actually all having to create each one of
and,
those
make sure that we are handing
particular folders and files
wherever
for each one of them, it's like no,
something else as well. Like all of that will be there, and you know, I still have asked like if you are in a JavaScript code base, you will not get the enforcement, but you will get the helpful like hover over answers to everything along the way, and so like the benefits are still there for something that you can very easily use today in your existing infrastructure. And so instead of, just because like I don't want to scroll down, I'm just gonna say unshift. Unshift puts it at the beginning of the array versus the end, so that we can, when I hit the button and I go, oh, it doesn't work, it does work, I just have to scroll, we'll put it at the top. So we'll have that in place, that'll be great. And we'll kind of move to our first kind of little challenge here, which is like, what does this look like if I want to migrate? Like, let's say like, this is cool, I like the fact that it wires up all of this for me. What are like the pieces that make this up that I could use in my existing code base, right? So like I have like that little counter app for you to play around with, and I will kind of show you a little bit and give you an, like kind of just an excuse to like try it out in an app. But like I will kind of show you some of the general pattern first before I cut you loose on that. So I'm just gonna make a scratch file that I'm not gonna keep real quick.
Can you talk
Yes.
about quick maybe why
I'd
they
love
called
to.
it slice?
Naming things is hard. It's like a slice of your application. I guess the answer is no, I can't talk about why it's called a slice. I personally, if I'm being candid and honest, it's not my favorite name for a thing.
Well, I guess it would talk about children.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, there's a bunch of naming, like, you know, the joke that bears repeating is the two hard problems in computer science are naming things, cache invalidation, off by one errors, right? Naming things is hard. Yeah, it's not, yeah. I remember, it's one of those things where it's like the first time I heard that, I was like, I'm not taking that seriously. And now it's been like 4 years and I don't think about it anymore. So I agree with you. I feel that same initial thought.
I've always thought about it as like a slice of the pie.
Yeah.
But I'm from Jersey, so I think about everything in terms of pizza.
Sure.
You know. Awesome. So imagine, if you will, we had a simple reducer look like this. This is regular old Redux. This is like, hi, I'm learning Redux. I guess
Not only regular
information
Redux,
here.
but also is something
But
that
other than
now
that
React
is
actually
kind of just a
incorporate
regular,
to the core.
This could be use reducer
Right.
for
So
React.
you
This
define
could be
is
anything, it
the
doesn't matter,
type
right? This is just a
of
general
your
pattern.
state,
Technically not
of
even
your
Redux, because
actions,
it's just a reducer function.
followed
and
by
it's like
the
of an action type.
reducers in a
like,
switch
you're like,
case.
I would like
Very
to
nice.
migrate from this, right? The slice thing seems cool, but it's like automatically naming actions. I can't do any of this. All of the pieces are available to you as well. So let's kind of talk about like what this would look like if we wanted to like migrate it and get a sense that
Okay. Because a lot of those code bases actually is going to, well, here we are going to see how can we migrate a reducer from Redux or React into Redux toolkit, right? Redux toolkit.
that will help us like understand a little bit like what's kind of going under the hood here. And so there are some like slices are made up from like two component pieces that are just regular Redux ideas. One is this create action.
Exactly, the create
Right?
action.
And create action, there have been libraries that you could use that have done the similar thing that I think are great. And a create action is just trying to like give you a standard way of making an action creator.
Exactly.
An action creator is a
It's an automatically
function
generate
that
an
formats the
action.
action that you hand to dispatch, right? And normally we were just kind of, it was like one of those best practices that we were just supposed to know how to do. Nothing forces you to do it, nothing made you do it, but we were supposed to do it, and we were all supposed to hope that everyone on the team did it consistently and in the same way. And there's a lot of smiling and nodding going on right now because we all know that that's not how that works, right? Like we, you know, especially as a team grows, it becomes harder. So with create action, we can just say like, what is the type of this action? So for instance, if I needed actions, I could say increment, right? Same way I did before. And then I give it some function. And let's say in this case, like, okay, what do you want to? If I don't give it anything, I will actually get a valid action out of it. So I could say. We got to save that in some kind of variable, right? Can't reference stuff you don't save in variables.
So it's returning
call
a
it.
function,
You
and
will
now
see
it's going
that I
to
get
generate is that action.
A valid,
Mhm.
valid action I can hand to dispatch. What is even better, though, what is even better,
Is that we have had now
Increment
TypeScript
action.
support. Dot payload.
dot type, is because functions are objects, so you can like put properties on functions. That is the type. So all of that kind of ceremony that we used to have to do of like, all right, I'm gonna make a bunch of constants that's a string in all caps so that I can't mistype it, and my code will like not compile if I, you know, say success has like 1 C or 4 S's in it or something along those lines. You will get this for free. So now you can have, like, even you could actually, if you look on increment too, it is also increment. So now you can pass, later on you could actually say, we'll refactor it right now actually.
Exactly, you say now it's like increment action.
So the same function that
increment dot
creates
type.
your actions, lets you dispatch them, you can also use in a regular reducer, right? And this will be now, the actions that come out of that increment action creator will be of the type increment, and the function's type property is also the same. So now you've removed all of this like make constants for the action types. You've removed the entire file where you make action creators. All of that like very like chore level stuff that you had to do, gone, right? And you know, if it does take a payload, like the nice part about this one is that payload is not undefined or something, right? It is assuming that the payload on this type of this increment action is in fact not defined, because we did not define it. So if you accidentally try to call the payload on it and you're using TypeScript, you get yelled at. And for the ones where you do define a payload, you will make sure that you're using the right properties with almost no work from yourself. And like, I love when I get good things with no work. That's like the best. So we've got this increment, and then what we're gonna do is, let's say we do want it to take some kind of payload, right? So action creators are usually a useful pattern for making sure we get what we want. So I could say something like amount
There's
is
a
a number,
callback here.
and that will give me back. I do have to format it in the payload, so let's make it a full function so it's clear for everyone. I can say return an object that has the payload
with the payload.
And you could either say it's the amount like that, or you can make it an amount key on an object, whatever you think you're gonna need. Like in this silly example, like I think this is fine. And you already get a hint on the number of squiggly lines that I have down here where things are upset with me. Which is now, I have to call this with a number, and it will know that the payload is a number. So I get full TypeScript support once again, and again, autocomplete if I'm using JavaScript. No work whatsoever. It's just there for me. And like I said before, this reducer has nothing to do with Redux Toolkit. It's just a thing that you can have and use like right now. And it's battle tested types. It's like crazy, like there's a conditional in there. You can go click and look at it. It's a lot of fun. And if you really don't even want to pull in the dependency, go and steal the types, right? And you can actually do some of these patterns as well, but I think it's a way to figure out a lot of the best practices, because these are kind of like the battle tested, agreed upon pieces. And like I am using this on like a sophisticated application right now, and like that seemed very like brush my shoulder off, but like on a big application, and I can guarantee that it like serves and scales. There's my personal guarantee. So we have that in place, and now if I said like something like 3, you'll see that I get like the correctly typed action.
The correctly typed action.
We have all those things in place, and it will now know if I say, it now knows the payload in this case is a number. Everything is typed. I don't think I wrote a single type in this file. I guess I wrote these ones that I'm not using that were already in the file for counteraction. But like, I didn't write a single type. I've got full TypeScript support in here as well, right? And so it's kind of interesting we can kind of put all of these things together and have it available for us, and it's all on there and ready to go. And like I said before, you can use it with anything that you want.
Similar with the reducers.
What I want you to do.
Okay. All right. Good. Well, that'll be all for this video. Take care. Bye-bye.